Okay, it is Monday, February 10th. We recap the Super Bowl. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions once again. Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets are getting a divorce. We look forward to the NHL Four Nations. We start discussing that. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, so what we've been sort of waiting for months. It's time to put a bow on the 2024-2025 NFL season. Is it even considered 2024-2025? I think it's just 2024. So the 2024 NFL season has come to a close. I want to go through everything that happened last night in that game. There's so much going on with the Super Bowl, whether that's the national anthem, the halftime show. I want to go through everything. I had thoughts. Now, the thing that kind of struck me going into this game was I feel a little bad for those covering. How many times could you possibly keep repeating Patrick Mahomes is competing, is trying to break a record and have a third straight Super Bowl? How many times could you possibly talk about that? And not just that, but they just had this matchup 2 years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, this game was also covered by Fox 2 years ago. So you have Kevin Burkhardt, who's now called the same teams twice, the same matchup twice. You have the studio, who just had this was the Super Bowl that they had 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure it was Fox 2 years ago. And so it just felt a lot of the same. It felt like we were listening to the same stories, we were listening to the same blah, 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 blah. So I'll start by saying the coverage, the pregame coverage, felt boring. It was fun seeing it in New Orleans. That was definitely a plus. On Bourbon Street, yay, tons of fun. The thing for me was that everything felt sort of boring leading up to the game. Brings us to let's go right to the national anthem. And John Baptiste, he used to be the band leader for Stephen Colbert, and he now has kind of gone on to his own solo career. I want to ask just one thing. Can we stop trying to reimagine the national anthem? Go in there. Oh, say, can you see? Can we just sing the national anthem in the normal way that everybody has leading up to basically like 2020? Just singing it. We don't have to overcomplicate it. We don't have to reimagine it. Because John Baptiste was doing this thing where he was saying the words at a different tempo, and it was just off. It didn't sound good, ultimately. Next year, can whoever sings the national anthem just go in there and sing it the normal way? That's all I ask. A normal anthem. Let's make the anthem normal again. Okay. And so, let's get into the actual game. Look, I could try in every which way to make this game dramatic, to talk about this game as if it was something competitive. It's essentially impossible. Early on in the game, the Eagles' first drive, the refs called a pass interference against A.J. Brown. So the Eagles are driving down the field. Hurts puts up a throw down the sideline that A.J. Brown, trying to create some sort of space, sticks his hand out to stiff arm, a move that we see receivers make all the time. Yet for some reason on this play, the refs decided to call pass interference. And Tom Brady, by the way, was perplexed by this call. And so was I. And the narrative online was, here we go. Chiefs again. Chiefs refs show again. And it kind of felt like that's how this game was going to go. And at this point it was 0-0. And it felt like this was what was going to be. Remember we spoke about the apology, that the refs felt like they had to come out with an apology, apologizing for and saying that there's no way that they favor the Chiefs. And people thought, I had people calling me saying, "What do you think? Is this are the refs cheating for the Chiefs once again?" And I said, I kind of laughed it off. What am I supposed to say? I'm a Bills fan, so what am I supposed to say? The rest of this game, it was all Eagles. And the funny part was, in the first half, I forgot exactly what the halftime score was. I think it was 24-0 at halftime. And so when it was about 17-0 with a couple minutes left in the second quarter, in the first half, and I was texting everybody I know, take Chiefs money line. This is when they come back. They will figure it out at halftime. They will be able to win this game. But the Chiefs really could not figure it out whatsoever. Tom Brady went on The Herd on Colin Cowherd's show last week, and he was talking about how he was elite at knowing what defenses would throw at him. And my gut reaction to that bit from Tom Brady was Patrick Mahomes is the exact same way. When you watch Mahomes, that's what you get. You get someone who anticipates. And his anticipation is his superpower. The same way anticipation was the superpower of Tom Brady. He prepared like no one did, and he knew exactly what defenses were going to throw at him every time he lined up to snap the ball. But boy, Mahomes did not show that ability at all last night. And the game sort of turned around when he had a drive and they were losing already, and he had a drive. It was later in the second half, and he had a drive where it was sack, pick six, and then on the next drive, they started the drive again with a loss of down, with a loss of yards on the first play. And at that point, the score was 17-0. I was thinking to myself at that point, even when it was 17-0, and I wrote this down at this time of the game, 17-0. No matter the outcome, this is what I wrote. I wrote down, I jotted down some notes here. No matter the outcome, this is the most overmatched Patrick Mahomes has been in 4 years since the last time he lost the Super Bowl to Tom Brady, 31-9 in that game. Let's scratch that from the record. This game somehow was the most overmatched Patrick Mahomes has ever been in his whole career. That includes regular season, that includes playoff, that included Super Bowl. He has never, not in any game, looked more out of place, more out of sorts than he did last night. And this is what I chalked it up to. Notice Saquon Barkley was a non-factor in this game. I spoke last week about how I thought that the Eagles' path was to establish the run with their guy, with their best player, make your best player the best player of the game. And to their credit, they tried. It's not like the Eagles came in here and weren't trying to feed the ball to Saquon. Especially early on, they were trying. He ended up with 57 yards on 25 carries. So they fed him the ball. He was averaging 2.3 yards per carry. He really could not get anything going. And the thing that I couldn't stop thinking about was, did the Chiefs over-prepare for Saquon Barkley and forget to make sure they're ready for the rest of this Eagles team? On Friday, when I was previewing this matchup, I said, look, the Eagles beat the Chiefs in pretty much every facet of their team besides for quarterback. And so the Eagles quickly were able to readjust their game plan. Their game plan early on was clearly to feed Saquon. But they were able to readjust that. Jalen Hurts was able to make good throws. He was able to establish his passing game. He was able to establish his rushing game. Jalen Hurts led the Eagles with rush yards. 72 yards on 11 carries. The ultimate irony was that after Saquon was able to carry the Eagles to that point, to the Super Bowl, he handed the baton off. Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown were able to take care of business for the Eagles. Devontae Smith, 69 yards on 4 receptions. A.J. Brown, 43 yards on 3 receptions. Both had touchdowns. Those guys were able to take the team and put them on their back. Now, the defense was phenomenal also. I mean, what Vic Fangio was able to call up and make the Chiefs' offensive line look silly. They sacked Patrick Mahomes 5 times. And again, to the point I was saying before, the Chiefs seemingly over-prepared for Saquon and under-prepared for the rest of everything else they needed to do. They couldn't get anything going offensively. The score was 40-22. 40-22. It was all garbage points. The Eagles, if they really wanted to, could have shut out the Chiefs. The Chiefs' offense was not prepared. The Chiefs' defense was not prepared for anything but Saquon running the ball. So if Steve Spagnuolo was only anticipating that the Eagles would run the ball with Saquon the entire game, he was wrong. He was wrong to assume that. He was wrong to underestimate what Jalen Hurts would be able to do. And frankly, if Andy Reid thought that he was just going to be able to have Mahomes sit back in the pocket and throw the ball at will, he was wrong too. He gravely miscalculated what the Eagles' defense was going to be able to do. And if we want to talk about Mahomes looking overmatched, this was the most overmatched Andy Reid has looked from an overall game, from all facets of a football game. Offense and defense. Andy Reid looked tremendously overmatched. By the way, the halftime show, so we had Kendrick Lamar in the halftime show. Look, I understand that this show was not meant for me. I don't know anything about the Drake-Kendrick Lamar drama, the whatever. Apparently, he dissed him on TV. Okay, great. It seemed to me like the only thing people wanted out of this halftime show was for Kendrick to destroy Drake on live TV. And he accomplished that, apparently. But it I don't know if I'm in the minority. It wasn't enjoyable. It was very boring. So if you got the entertainment value from just watching him destroy Drake, fine. It just seemed to be a bunch of people dancing for 10 minutes straight. And the Super Bowl halftime show has become much more than just that. It's supposed to be a spectacle. It was nothing close to a spectacle. It was cool, and they were jumping out of the car. I liked the moment where they had the acapella in the background. That was cool. Samuel L. Jackson was confusing. It did not work with Samuel L. Jackson. He did the Nothing Like Us, that song that's number 1, I think. Good song. Sounded good. I think that's the Drake diss track or whatever it is. I must sound so stupid right now. Look, if you enjoy Kendrick Lamar, I'm not like a Kendrick Lamar fan. If you enjoy him, I'm sure it was great. But then After the halftime show, the Eagles went on to obliterate the Chiefs. It was a joke. One of the least entertaining Super Bowls, and I feel bad saying that because I feel like every year we just say, "Oh, the Super Bowl stunk. The halftime show stunk." They just did. Like, what else am I supposed to say? They were bad. I just want to kind of put a bow, though, on something we spoke about last week. I don't want to hear any complaining about Jalen Hurts from here on out. He has now made the Super Bowl 2 out of 4 seasons and has won one. He is in the conversation. And, I mentioned last week, one thing we spoke about is Jalen Hurts going to enter the conversation with the Josh Allens, with the Joe Burrows, with the Lamar Jacksons, if he wins? And he did. And I was really thinking yes. And and now he has a Super Bowl MVP. So he won MVP last night. So let's just add that when we're talking about this. He has those two things, a Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP, that Allen, Lamar, Burrow do not have. The counterpoint, and I think I discounted this too much last week, but the counterpoint to that is he's the one in the NFC that has been able to win the NFC and shall only have to face Patrick Mahomes come Super Bowl time. Now, him and Burrow are the only ones that have beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl. So that counts for something. I think today, you can't list the other three without listing Jalen Hurts. You just can't. It's not fair. It's historically inaccurate. If you're going to list all those guys at the top quarterbacks in the league, you're not going to list a guy as young as Jalen Hurts is as being in the top. And so I think the way to talk about it from here on out is the four most talented quarterbacks in football right now are Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. And then you have Jalen Hurts right on the outside looking in. He's on the outside looking in. He is not as talented as those four, but he's proven with the right pieces and the right coaching, he can win a Super Bowl. And he has won a Super Bowl like that. And that's it. End of story. I would compare him to Matthew Stafford. Great quarterback, not an elite one. With the right pieces around him, can win the Super Bowl. And that's it. And Nick Sirianni deserves apologies from Eagles fans too. He has, again, the same thing as Jalen Hurts. He has been in the Super Bowl twice in 4 years. And by the way, quick side note, Jalen Hurts twice in 4 years as a starting quarterback. He sat behind Carson Wentz in his first season. But the same thing with Nick Sirianni. I don't want to hear any more complaining. No calling for firing Nick Sirianni anymore from Eagles fans. He has a 5-year grace period now. That's it. He won a Super Bowl. 5 years. Doesn't have to make the playoffs for the next 5 years. They were also saying after the game, Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator for the Eagles, is going to be the head coach of the Saints, which is kind of cool. He wins the Super Bowl with the Eagles in New Orleans, and then on his future home field. Okay. I had a lot of thoughts on this. Maybe we'll talk about it a little more tomorrow. Maybe we'll get into the kind of the Chiefs side of this whole thing. They had Travis Kelce. A lot of speculation going into this game whether he'll retire. After the game, they showed Taylor Swift. She got booed. But maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. We have a couple more things I want to get to here. It's already been almost 20 minutes talking about the Super Bowl, which is rightfully so. Okay, let's move on. Because yesterday we had a big development on the New York Jets' future. Jay Glazer tweeted, "Big scoopage." Interesting way of putting it. Aaron Rodgers flew back to New Jersey last week to meet with the Jets about the future with the team, only to be told that the team was moving on from him. If that means that he will be a June 1st designation that allows him to sign with any team in the league on March 12th, if he decides to continue to play. Given that Aaron made the effort to fly back to discuss his future, all signs point to him continuing to play. It just won't be for the Jets. Look, the Jets are in a tough spot here. New regime, Aaron Glenn, Darren Moogie, and they both deserve a fresh start. Look at the Giants. Look at how Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have had to adopt a quarterback in Daniel Jones, and look how that situation turned out for them. And so the Jets are going to try a different approach. Not that Aaron Rodgers is comparable to Daniel Jones whatsoever, but the Jets' new regime deserves a fresh start. And frankly, Aaron Rodgers also deserves out of a situation that he did not sign up for. The question is, where do these two parties go from here? If you're the Jets, what are you doing at quarterback next season? Do you grab a quarterback in the draft? Is there going to be someone, is there going to be someone available even that at number 7 that they'd be interested in? You're taking yourself out of the Shedeur Sanders Cam Ward conversation, but maybe that's a good position to be in. We'll get into this over the next couple weeks and months leading up to the draft. Sometimes not having the pressure to take the consensus top quarterbacks is better for you. Find someone who fits your system and you like. And it can be a more obscure pick. Not as obscure as Daniel Jones or Zach Wilson. Don't try to overthink it. But there's another tier of quarterbacks you can choose from. They pick number 7 overall, so it's kind of like a little sweet spot there, where it's a little bit later on, so they don't have to feel pressure to take a top consensus pick, but they could also get a little creative. And honestly, the thing I think about is, do you trust the new offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, to develop a young quarterback? He was the pass game coordinator with the Lions. He's been with Jared Goff in the NFL, but that's it. He has not proven that he's working with young quarterbacks. Side point, I find it funny that if Rodgers would have stayed with the Jets, Engstrand's only a year older than him. So he would have been the offensive coordinator for a guy who was a year younger than him. And for Aaron Rodgers, the NFL world is his oyster. Could it be the Las Vegas Raiders? They're obviously looking for a quarterback with a new head coach, Pete Carroll. Could it be the Steelers, who, by the way, yesterday, it was said that they might move on from both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And this is on the exact same day it was revealed that Aaron Rodgers would not be returning to the Jets. So I find that to be kind of like Brian Windhorst fingers up type of situation over there. And, maybe let's get a little frisky. Why not maybe the New York Giants? Rodgers could stay exactly where he is. Doesn't have to move. If Daboll likes what he sees in Rodgers, why not? If they feel confident that they can build around him for a year or two, why not? Who knows where he will end up? Okay, let's move on. We've got a couple more topics here to talk about. Let's run quickly through the NBA. We spoke about last week how Luka Doncic was going to make his debut on Saturday for the Lakers. It was supposed to be his big debut on Saturday, they even flexed that game to ESPN. But no, he did not end up playing. There was no LeBron, no Luka that game. Now they're saying it's going to happen Monday. And don't worry, that game will be on ESPN. You'll be able to catch it. So no Luka debut, but we did get an Anthony Davis debut. The Mavs dominated the Rockets in their first game with Anthony Davis. They won 116-105. The story of the whole game was Anthony Davis. He got injured, in a non-contact injury. He left in the third quarter. They were calling it a lower body injury, and they say it's not long-term. Leading up to that point, he had 24 points, 13 rebounds, and 5 assists. So a nice debut for him. But this is what the Mavs are getting. They're in Anthony Davis. They're getting a player who is constantly injured, an older player And what was funny was everybody was saying yesterday, after this injury news came out, you literally traded, if you're the Mavs, you traded an injured old man for a healthy young man. Like, it makes no sense. The whole thing just makes no sense. He had a nice game, but still, there's something we are missing here. And what was funny, I saw yesterday a tweet that was going around was, I think it was Mavs Muse. They tweeted, Patrick Mahomes just lost in the championship. I guess next season they're going to trade him and say the reason why is because he's out of shape. Found that to be very funny. Okay, let's move on here. A week ago, I went off about the Pro Bowl. So we're a week, we've now, a week has passed since the Pro Bowl. I said that NHL, NBA, and NFL have their all-star games all wrong. And if their only objective was to make money, and they were doing that, that's fine. Then continue it. That's their prerogative. But if there was any weight on what they were outputting, what the product was, and actually putting out a good product, then they had a lot of work to do. These games are opportunities for the league to create additional TV revenue, merchandising, and they're opportunities for host cities to make money on the event. When the NHL, when the NBA, when the NFL, when they have these all-star game events, it's money opportunities, and so many of them. The issue is that as the years go by, there's less and less interest in these games. And so each of the three aforementioned leagues have implemented different formats in past years. The NFL switched from an actual football game to a flag football game. The NBA ditched East versus West. They had players drafting teams, and now they're doing a mini tournament format this year. So a few years ago, the NHL switched from East versus West format to they did a mini tournament, division versus division. But now the NHL is taking a different approach this year. They are having what they're calling the Four Nations. The Four Nations is a tournament comprised of 4 countries: United States, Canada, Sweden, and Finland. And the 4 teams are comprised of the best NHL players from those countries. So essentially, this is the NHL's edition, an NHL-owned version of the Olympics. I really hope that this works for the NHL. To me, it's very intriguing. These 3 leagues have not been able to figure it out. What the NHL has that the other major leagues don't is the diversity of countries its players come from. And they totally can and they totally should lean into that. And I will tune in. I'm going to tune in not just because, it's what's on TV, but I'm going to tune in. I have genuine interest in this event. I'm actually excited to see what this product is. And I haven't been able to say that about any of these events for a long time. The NFL could never do this. But Adam Silver better be sitting there with a pen and paper taking notes. The NBA can replicate this. They have players from a lot of different countries, and they can figure out a way to replicate this. The NFL is still on the drawing board, but this Four Nations tournament starts in 3 days. February 12th is the first matchup, and I am really looking forward to watching it. Okay, that's it. Tomorrow we'll discuss any big news that happens in sports. Thank you for listening to the Early Game Podcast. Make sure you follow on X, follow on Spotify, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Have a wonderful day.